Welcome to Inside Politics. I'm Chris Varcoe with the Calgary Herald, joined by columnist Don Braid. Don, let's talk in the past week about the two things that have been really sort of commanding headlines at the legislature, and really for two different reasons. One is the climate change plan from the government of Alberta, which includes a carbon tax and phasing out coal-fired power plants and capping oil sands emission. That seems to be going reasonably well for the government. But the government's farm workers' safety legislation, Bill 6, is going in completely the opposite direction. So let's start with the carbon plan. Why is the government seeming to be winning this battle and getting ahead on it?
Well, they put a lot of effort, a lot of thought, and a lot of consultation into it. It is incredibly, potentially dangerous, but they actually seem to have turned it into a win with a lot of Albertans. So people are saying, yeah, we got to do something. What if we wait 4 years, do nothing, and what happens then? Many people, at least, are generally favorable, and they've handled the thing with considerable skill. They had talked about conversion of coal, and they trotted out a whole bunch of industry leaders. Obviously, the renewables sector is really keen about this because they're going to get a lot of government grants and everything. But they've lined up one corporate leader after another to say they like it. The environmentalists obviously like it. Trudeau likes it. Paris likes it. Everybody likes it. Not everybody, but in their terms, in this context, it's a big win.
They're framing the issue, and even though there's big questions here, like, for instance, how much is it going to cost Alberta taxpayers to shut down coal-fired power plants in the billions, presumably? What's going to happen with the $3 or $4 billion a year raised from the carbon levy? Despite the fact there's big questions, they've skillfully managed it. I guess that's our point.
I agree.
Okay, so the farm workers legislation, Bill 6 as it's known, has prompted a couple of rallies out front of the legislature. It's got Facebook petitions against it. People in the farm community are very concerned. And just to basically recap what the bill is, the WCB becomes mandatory as of January 1st for agricultural enterprises as well. Labor standards legislation like minimum wage and holiday pay will be put into place. That sounds like something that the government should be winning on. They campaigned on it. It seems positive, but they're mishandling it. Why?
Well, you have to watch rural Alberta, and this government doesn't know rural Alberta really well. It brings to mind .05. Remember what happened in rural Alberta with .05? Remember what happened with Ed Stelmach's power transmission lines? Big explosions, political danger. They didn't consult properly. They did exactly the opposite of what they did with climate change in not doing their homework on this issue, and I think not realizing how incredibly explosive it was going to be, to the point where the minister, Laurie Sigurdsson, actually put out a news release at 5:24 p.m. on last Friday, to say, oh, don't worry, nothing's going to happen, and we're consulting. They're worried about this.
It seems really strange, though, that something like a carbon tax they're handling very well and they seem to be ahead of, and something about protecting farm workers they're falling behind on.
Particularly when the farm workers in every other province in Canada have had this kind of protection for many, many years. The farm community itself knew this was coming, and yet there's something about the way the NDP has handled it that makes them furious. And also, we have to remember that Wild Rose is out there, and they do a pretty good job of organizing.
Okay, well, we're talking about politics, but let's talk about something that matters more, and that is the tragedy that took the life of Tory MLA Manmeet Bhullar last week. He was helping a motorist on the side of a highway when he was struck by another car. There was a big memorial for him here on the weekend in Calgary. It was obviously much a tragedy, but it brought out some of the best in Alberta politics, and particularly at the legislature and what we saw with our politicians.
What happened one day was complete unanimity among everyone. Wild Rose, which has a right to the most questions because they're the official opposition, gave all their questions to the PCs. Every question asked from the floor that day was a question Manmeet Bhullar would have asked because he had a wide range of interests and things that he did as a minister and as an opposition member. It was heartwarming to see. It was terrible that it happened, but it became a kind of ennobling thing. And people reacted to all the media coverage and everything with incredibly positive reaction. There was no cynicism about it. It was quite a unique event, in my view.
So, Don, that takes us to our winners and losers of the week. Let's talk about the loser, and maybe you can explain.
Well, I would just say simply that Alberta political life in general is the loser because of the tragic absence of Manmeet Bhullar, who truly was a remarkable figure, both for the future of the province and the diversity of our public life and for the ideals he represented.
All right. Well, I'm going to agree with you, and let's go into our winners of the week. Who's your winner?
I would have to say Notley and Shannon Phillips and her whole climate change coal conversion apparatus, who've managed to this point to pull this off extremely well, although we'll see what happens 3 months from now when the real details start to hit the road in Canada.
Okay, well, my winner of the week is going to be Dr. David Swan, the Liberal leader. He doesn't get to ask many questions because his party only has one seat in the legislature. But last week he asked a question about the fentanyl crisis, and he said that basically we're staring into a crisis which is going to claim upwards of one Albertan a week. That's 365 Albertans who can die from fentanyl or other opiates, and is calling on the government to take some strong action, including maybe declaring a public health emergency so they can get some more of the antidotes out into the community, as well as, sparking a debate about safe injection sites, which, obviously is another tragedy, but it's good that he's at least got the public dialogue going.
Right, I completely agree. David Swan is in many ways the moral conscience of the legislature on many of these kinds of issues.
All right, thanks, Don.
Thank you.